Hello. Today we are going to talk about acne. So, if you have acne or you have a history of acne, and you would like to understand what it is and how to address it, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give, if you're watching the VOD, I'm going to give people a few minutes to trickle in, and later after the stream, I add in chapters so you can scroll to the start if you like. Hello. We'll be getting started in a minute. I'm going to talk about acne today. Raise of hands, how many of you have had acne? Very common. I had acne a bit when I was a kid. I mean, it was a lot, but it wasn't like cystic acne. It was enough to make me insecure, and yeah, enough to make me insecure. As if you need a reason to be insecure as a teenager. Just being a teenager, by virtue of being a teenager, usually is accompanied by, hey Jay, is accompanied by insecurity no matter what. But here's a secret for you, all you teenagers out there. Adults are just as much, if not more, insecure than you are. Everyone just tries to pretend that they're not. That was one of the big lessons I learned growing up, was that pretty much everybody else are just as fearful and worried and insecure as everybody else, and that we normally project the things that we want onto other people, when in fact, you know, they have problems of their own and trauma of their own that causes the insecurity. Also, the format of this is that I talk about a subject for a while, in this case acne, and then answer a question, do a Q&A at the end. So anybody participating is welcome to ask me questions. I don't normally get to the questions until I'm done, but this is going to be a really short topic, so I might be able to. I have such a one-track brain. I can't like focus like very well. So I usually just steamroll through my subject. But acne is actually pretty simple. This probably won't even be that long of a stream. So I'll probably get to questions as they happen. But we'll give people a few more minutes to come in here, and we'll get started soon. As I finish the rest of my coffee. How's your guys' weekends going? I haven't streamed on a Saturday before. I thought I would for people who couldn't come to streams during the week, but I also did not put out a notice very early, so unfortunately some people who might wanted to have attended probably still will not see it in time. But if you missed this stream, you know, try to come to a future one. You know, I'm going to be doing these for a long time, so there will be future opportunities. Hey, Word. I would like to do 2 a week usually. I haven't done one for a little while. I got really busy with work and research. Sometimes when I get onto a research topic and I'm really like occupied with it, it's hard to do a stream just because my brain just is not in that space, and I'm sort of preoccupied and obsessed with something that I'm working on. So I didn't stream for, I think it's been about a week and a half. But I would like to do 2 streams a week at least. I would love to do more, but you know, I don't have a wide audience and there's not a lot of content to make. I would love to make actual like YouTube videos, but those are time consuming, and it would be really great if I could have an editor, and I don't have access to those resources. So I made one. I made a video myself on sugar that's in my channel as a test, kind of as a test run, and I liked it. It was fun. It was fun to do. But like acquiring all of those assets and then putting it together, it takes a really long time. And then even on top of that, I'm not a really great editor, so the time isn't really worth it because it doesn't turn out as good as it should be. So I would like to produce actual content as well in the future, but can't really do that till I get a bigger audience. So, oh hey Milan, welcome. Are you? Is it really late your time? Did you wake up, or are you or have you been up all night? I think it's really late your time, or maybe it's really early your time. But yeah, I thought I would stream on a Saturday to give more people a chance to attend. Yeah, well, we can go ahead and get started. We've got a few people, not a whole lot, but it is a Saturday anyway, so. Yeah, so you're going to travel. It's 1:07. Oh, that's not too late. Fun. Oh, I hope your trip is good. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about acne this week, especially because I was starting to see a lot of ads pop up for acne treatments. And it reminded me of my experience as a young man with acne issues and how stressful it was. And oh, thanks, Word. Yeah, I'm glad to have you here, of course, too. So thanks for being here, guys. So I had pretty bad acne as a kid. It wasn't the worst at all, but it was constant and annoying. And although actually one of the things that made it more burdensome than it would have normally been was that like my dad was obsessed with our acne. My dad is a bit of a narcissist, and when parents are narcissists, and many of you can probably relate to this, when parents have narcissistic tendencies, they tend to see physical illness and flaws in their children as threats to their own sense of self-worth. And so they will become obsessed with or preoccupied with the appearance or health of their children. And I'm saying health in like quotes, their idea of health. They'll be obsessed with those themes in their children, and that can stress out the child even more because, you know, on top of having the acne, you also have a parent who is really insecure about you having acne when it shouldn't fucking matter to them in that way. And so, you know, having that double whammy of both having acne and being an insecure teenager and having my dad obsessed with me having acne was really awful. And he, you know, at first he tried to put me on some more benign medications, but eventually he put me on Accutane. And like just off the bat here, like a lot of medications that treat acne are so harmful for you. Do not use them even if you have bad acne. It's not worth it. You can fix it through the stuff we're going to be talking about here. It's actually really easy to fix. Surprisingly, it is so easy to fix that I can't believe that this information is not more widespread. Although that would make sense considering our our capitalist motivation for acne treatments, where everything that is available for treating acne is meant to turn a profit. So, they don't really actually have vested interest in actually curing acne, because then it would wipe out, pharmaceutical profits for a huge market. There's so much money to be made in acne. I was trying to remember, but I can't remember what that product was when I was a teenager, and it was around even in the early two in the 2000 in 2000 the 2000s when I was in my 20s. Um, there was a really popular acne like cream company, and I just can't remember. I wonder if you guys remember what it was. It was in a white bottle and it had like green writing on it, and everybody had it. And it was like a two-step thing, and you had to buy like two creams and then an after cream, and you had to use them in a certain order. And it was also like a multi-level marketing product. And so it was just awful stuff, and it didn't really work for me anyway either. Because the secret is that none of the acne treatments treat acne effectively or long term, because they don't operate on how acne on the real underlying causes of acne. um oh, you look, yeah, yeah, like, our perception word of like our self-worth as children, as kids, as young people, we don't have much life experience, and a lot of our perception of ourselves is informed by our parents and our environment, and you don't have the wealth of knowledge about how life really works until you get into your, late 30s, 40s, and 50s. Even then, some people don't. Even then there are a lot of adults that act like little children. I mean, that's insulting to little children. Actually, they act worse than little kids. Proactive, yes, thank you, word. That's the brand that was popular at the time. And there was Jessica Simpson did ads for that, and bless her heart, I love her, but that was just an awful scam. And it might have worked for some people with like mild acne, but it definitely did not work for me. And um, and before the Accutane, I think I got put on like some mild antibiotic that maybe kind of worked a little bit. And I think maybe, I don't remember Proactive had it, but there were some products that have salicylic acid in them, and those kind of worked a little bit. And actually, like, salicylic acid itself is actually safe, but sometimes the products have other things in them that are not safe. And salicylic acid works a little bit because it's aspirin basically, and it's anti-inflammatory and slightly antibiotic. Oh, hang on. For some reason, censored your message. There are a lot of salicylic acid, yeah, containing products out there for acne. They're so expensive. Oh, are they now? They weren't so expensive when I was younger, but oh yeah, yeah. I'm glad you used Dr. Bronner's products. Those are great. And Sam, since we're sorry, I was about to sound like lecturing, and I don't mean to. Sorry. So I'm going to talk about acne for a while, and then I'll answer your question later. So I didn't want you to think that I'm ignoring you, but I will get to that one. The short answer is they have solanine in them. That's actually a glycoalkaloid toxin. But anyway, so my dad put me on Accutane, and Accutane is so harmful. Accutane interrupts your vitamin A pathways. It's, as I understand it, it's like a synthetic derivative of vitamin A, and you need vitamin A. Vitamin A is so important for a lot of things, but primarily steroidogenesis, which is the production of steroids, including sex hormones. So Accutane can cause very severe endocrinological disruption, and a lot of its side effects and long-term permanent side effects mimic conditions like osteoporosis. Like, you'll get like young men who went on high dose Accutane who will end up having low bone density and hypogonadism and severe depression. And I had all of these later, and so they were likely very, but there are other mitigating corroborating factors. Like, I was captain of my swimming team, and I trained with my swimming team like every day. Sometimes we had 2-a-day practices, And I had an eating disorder. I was not eating enough food, and I had and so that also, and then being exposed to the abundance of chlorine in the pool as well contributed to thyroid disease. So there were a lot of other factors that contributed to that, but the Accutane was also a major factor, and it has very, very harmful side effects that can be permanent as well, especially if you take it as a young developing person. My dad would, and I think he still takes Accutane, and he would just eat them like candy, like just kind of take them when he wanted to. And like I think it had some benefit for him, but not really, because and that's the irony of all of these medications. None of them permanently solve acne. They don't. You have to keep using the product, and even then, they don't really solve it. Accutane did not permanently solve my acne. The only thing that Accutane did in regard to acne was it got rid of it while I was using it, and then permanently it got rid of like my back knee, but it did not actually permanently resolve acne on my face. And that's the thing about these products. And one of the big warning signs is like, do you want to keep using these products forever and ever? Because that's what they're designed for. They are not designed to cure acne in you, because that's not the point. They want to continue siphoning money from you. And they can't do that if they cure acne. And that's why they don't cure acne. It's just a capitalistic exploitation of people who are in need. So we're going to talk about the real way to cure acne and what causes it. And we'll start off first. Like everybody knows that acne is caused by bacteria, and that's true in a way. And that's why a lot of products. So there's this product being circulated around called Curology, and it probably does work a bit to cure acne temporarily while you're using it, because it's heavily loaded with antibiotics, so that kills like the bacteria that is on your skin, contributing to the acne. But guess what, it also kills your commensal microbiome that is on your skin. And there are protective healthy bacteria that live on our skin that protect us from harmful pathogens. And so I could easily see the use of Curology farther down the road leading to other conditions that involve microbiological pathogenic infection of the skin, especially like yeasts and mites. I mean, our healthy commensal microbiome protects our body from a really wide host of pathogens. And there's so many antibiotic products in our consumer outlets, like and systems, because people are just obsessed with germs and germophobic and think that germs are just the problem of everything. But they fail to consider the healthy germs, the healthy microbes that actually are on our side and help protect us. When I was doing research into oral disease, I found a lot of studies that talked about how our oral commensal microbiome protects our gum and teeth from pathogenic organisms that cause tooth decay and gingivitis. And there were studies that showed that the more you used mouthwash and flossed, the higher your risk of contracting pathogenic gum disease was, because those things kill off our oral microbiome. And flossing doesn't, but flossing breaks the gum line and can make you bleed, and then those pathogens can access the blood and the nutrients in your blood. And especially if your oral microbiome has been killed off by excessively sterilizing oral mouthwashes. You're not going to get told this by the companies that are making these goddamn products, because they want to make money off of you. That's the entire point. And if you're just blindly using these products like me, you're going to get debilitating side effects and more disease in the future. The key is to address the underlying problem. So basically, and this is one of the reasons why acne is so easy to treat, because it's basically just excessive dietary intake of iron. So iron is very important for our health. We need iron to grow, to operate a lot of respiratory enzymes. Even our immune system functions on iron. There are peroxidase enzymes that are based on heme, and heme is a iron iron-based protein that is involved in respiration and hemoglobin. I mean, everybody knows about hemoglobin, right? It's what makes your red blood cells red. And well, if they have oxygen, actually. And that is an iron. That is a function of dietary iron. And so we need iron for our health. But bacteria and especially pathogenic bacteria need iron for their health way more than we do. They're very susceptible to iron fluctuation. And one of the entire purposes of infecting us is to gain access to nutrients like iron. And So one of the reasons that acne happens is because iron, and so okay, so because pathogens require access to iron, our body has evolved to manage iron in such a way that it reduces the risk of bacterial infection because they need access to it, right? So if our body can block their access, then it can prevent infection, and it does that. There's in part of the innate immune reaction, there is a nutrient sequestration protection process that when your body detects infection by pathogen, it sequesters away nutrients from areas that are easily accessed by pathogens. So one of the innate roots of our iron metabolism pathways is that iron is not largely secreted into the intestinal system when it's used up to be excreted in feces or urine. I mean, not that urine's attached to the intestinal system, but you know what I mean. It doesn't go through our urine because those areas have a lot of bacteria in them. Their bacteria can easily get access. There's tons of bacteria inside of our gut, and they can also easily gain access to your urethra, as any, especially as women often unfortunately experience with like frequent urinary tract infections. If our body were to secrete a large amount of iron in those areas, it would fuel access to pathogenic organisms that that colonize those areas and support infection and increase risk of death. In babies, little babies, there's actually very little iron in milk for this very reason. If babies' immune systems are not well developed, and if they had lots of iron in their gastrointestinal tract, because if milk had iron, and this happens too, and like infant formula often has iron added to it, and it's such a fucking insane thing because natural human milk does not have very much iron at all for this very adaptive survival purpose. Your a baby, as it's gestating in the womb, collects iron in its liver so that it has a great store of iron from which to draw as it is nursing and eating food that is low in iron. But stupid commercial idiots that make these formulations are like, oh, milk is low in iron, so we're going to add iron to our formula and it'll be better. No, there's a fucking reason that breast milk is low in iron. And it's to protect the baby from infection. So if you start feeding a baby like iron fortified milk replacement and stuff like that, they are at increased risk of infection, and they do get them, and it becomes really debilitating for the infants because their immune system is not matured and able to resist those kinds of infections. The reason that a baby can be healthy and thrive and be resistant to infection is not because their immune system is working great. It is because their body is designed by our human biology to limit the resources that pathogens need access to in order to cause disease. So, for this purpose, our body tends to increase or to secrete iron through other routes other than fecal and urinary excretion. And one of the primary routes for iron secretion from the body, from spent iron, is through the skin. Because if iron is moved out of the body through the skin is a much more effective barrier than the intestinal system in resisting pathogenic infection. And this is the cause of acne, is too much iron consumption, which then increases the body's absorption of iron. And then that excess iron is secreted in higher quantities through the skin. And then bacteria pathogenic organisms that live on the skin then have access to that abundance of iron that is originating in the diet. And one of the reasons that this also happens on the face, but also it does happen on your torso, like especially a lot of dudes have back acne. But one of the primary reasons that this happens on the face is because the iron in your face is coming from your brain. The brain is the highest, is the most metabolically active organ in the body, and requires iron in a lot of pathways that run our biology and run our brain. And when that iron is spent and done, it needs somewhere to go. And the fastest route out of the body is straight through the skin, out of the face, because it doesn't really have to go through bone very much, like the blood circulation and the way that it can't really go through. Although it does still go through the skull and the scalp. And you can get acne under your hair and other infections like dandruff also has like an iron excretion component to it, because those pathogens that are feeding on our tissues require these nutrients, and when they're being secreted through the skin in high quantities, that then can disable our acne defenses. So the fastest, easiest way for iron to get iron also is secreted in your earwax tissue, actually. Tissue in your earwax secretions. That is also another route for iron secretion from the brain to get rid of the excess iron that it no longer needs. So one of the first things that needs to happen is that you need to reduce your excess iron exposure. But for most people, especially for teenagers and younger kids, the origination of this excess iron is coming from iron fortified foods, not really from normal diets. If you have a normal diet where you just eat whole food, that usually isn't enough to cause severe acne. The iron that is causing acne is actually in wheat and other grains that are fortified with added iron. The reason that wheat has iron added to it is because a long time ago, a bunch of scientists thought that adding iron to wheat would be a great way to address widespread anemia. Anemia was and still is pretty widespread, and they thought that just by adding iron to wheat, they could help solve anemia. But they added some iron to wheat, but it actually had no effect on the anemic population, because that's not what fucking causes anemia. And I'm really angry because I just can't believe how stupid people are. I was helping this. I have these people approached me for some help. Their infant son was waking up every night severely itching. He was only like 18 months old. And they went to specialists and doctors, and the doctors had the baby on all these prebiotics and all these formulas and all this other crap, and it was not improving at all. It was so bad they had to hire a nanny to sit with him at night so that they could get some sleep, because he was waking up every single night for hours and hours and unable to sleep. And it just broke my heart. Kids shouldn't have to go through that kind of stuff. And I fixed it in a day. I just told them what to do, how to change their diet, and what they were adding in there. There were probiotics and A1 milk, and just getting rid of those things solved it. And he was fine. In one day, I was able to help this family that even specialists and doctors couldn't help, because they're not fucking taught these things. They're taught how to make money off of healthcare. They're not taught how it actually works. Especially not nutrition and very rarely microbiological stuff. I mean, the only people that really know much about microbes are actual like microbiologists, not doctors. Doctors are not taught how bacteria work and operate and how nutrition plays a role in these things. That's why they sell you these fucking acne products that don't work and very often have debilitating side effects, because the point is not to cure acne, it's to make money. So anyway, I get really angry because of this stuff. So anyway, especially because of what it did to me, because Accutane, like the doctor that put me on Accutane should lose his medical license. It was not approved for mild acne because they knew that it had serious side effects. And it was only worth the risk if you had like cystic acne. And I definitely did not have cystic acne. And even then, cystic acne, this is the same cause, is this excessive iron in the diet coming from fortified wheat. So basically just avoiding iron fortified products can make a huge dent in your acne breakouts, because you're reducing this free iron excess or absorption into your body. Sam, so a lot of governments require flour to be fortified by iron. This was originally from lobbying to, there was probably a huge lobbying angle. A lot of people making money supplying iron, and fortifying it too. And iron fortified flour is nothing but adding iron shavings into your flour. It's so fucking gross. It is not biologically relevant. Iron that is in whole food is protein bound, and it is much safer for you, and it's easier for our body to actually use properly. If you're just eating iron shavings in your food, that's not healthful. It's really gross. It's basically just like eating rust. Like all you're doing is eating rust. That's what it is. That's when you read labels of flour and baked goods that say ferric iron or I can't remember what the other forms are. Anything that says ferric, anything that says iron, reduced iron, it's rust. You're eating rust. They are adding rust to your flour for some stupid fucking reason that wasn't even legitimate in the first place, because anemia is not caused by iron deficiency usually. It can be, but there's regulatory pathways in our body that manage iron release from storage, and people that have anemia have excess of those factors that inhibit iron release from storage. It's not usually if you're eating any meat in your diet, you're getting plenty of dietary iron, and you don't need to take iron supplements. Oh, and that's the other thing too. Doctors put people on iron supplements all the time, and it just fucking makes these problems worse because pathogenic bacteria need that iron for their growth. It is not physiologically relevant to our biology. So anyway, so we're consuming this excess fortified iron usually, especially teenagers. Like when you hit puberty, the reason that acne starts to happen is because sex hormones increase the uptake of iron, because iron is required for pathways of growth and maturation, and the pathways that make you into an adult human with secondary sex characteristics require more iron. It's one of the reasons for childhood in the first place, actually, is to grow a body of quantitative size before increasing factors that risk pathogenic bacterial infection. A lot of people think in evolutionary terms that our ancestors and other animals compete against other animals, like our human beings had to compete with like saber-toothed tigers and hunt mammoths, and we think of competition on that scale, but actually the biggest evolutionary pressures are from microbes. Our ability to resist infection is the most important evolutionary adaptations. And that's why our body has these strategies. That's why childhood exists. Childhood biologically exists so that organisms can grow big before they increase their risk of contracting microbiological illnesses through the increased absorption of things like iron and copper and zinc and other minerals that bacteria and pathogens also are after. So that's why acne sets in at adolescence, is because your raging sex hormones promote an increase in iron uptake. And so if you're eating iron fortified wheat, that just skyrockets and you absorb so much excess iron. And there are other factors in this too that we'll get into, but that's the basic of this. And so then your body's got to get rid of that excess, and the excess goes through your skin, and then that in turn feeds these pathogenic organisms that live on your skin. So that's the foundation of acne. But then there are some other factors that go into this as well. So our skin has protective barriers for pathogenic organisms already built in as well. They're mainly contained to the oily secretion of on skin. The oil that's on your skin, that is full of antibacterial peptides and fatty acids that are meant to kill pathogenic organisms. But you wash it off every day when you wash your face. You basically are stripping away the protective acidic barrier that prevents bacterial infection in the first place. And this is one of the reasons for, like, when you have acne and like you try to wash your face every day and it just doesn't seem to do anything, it's because you're actually stripping away the immune barrier that's on your skin. Also, there are factors in the skin. Excuse me, I need a drink of coffee. That's so good. So you're basically stripping away this protective barrier, but that barrier also helps to feed commensal microbes. So you're also stripping away the commensal microbes, the protective, healthy microbes that live on our skin that would also protect your skin from the acne-causing bacteria. Our skin is really unique in the animal kingdom. We produce a fatty acid that is found in no other species. It's called sapienic acid, and it's highly antibacterial. And it is made in the sebaceous glands of the skin. And it is a unsaturated fat, though. It's not a saturated fat. It is an unsaturated fat. The skin metabolism involves a lot of unsaturated fats because the skin's temperature is lower than the core of the body. So in order for fats to be biologically active, they need to be more unsaturated so that they don't solidify. I make this analogy in my book where if fish were made of saturated fats like butter, they live in a veritable refrigerator, so they would turn solid in the temperature of the ocean and they'd be unable to swim. And that analogy is true for our skin as well, because the skin is a few degrees cooler than the core of the body. It can't really manage saturated fats as easily unless you have a really high metabolic rate. So the skin is full of desaturase enzymes that desaturate fats into unsaturated fats in the skin so that they can actually pass through cellular structures. Sapienic acid is made, I think, from I don't remember. I think it's made from palmitic acid originally, or it may be oleic acid, but I think it's palmitic acid. And if you have a diet that is overly high in polyunsaturated fats, which mostly come from vegetable oils, and soy oil, which are now ubiquitous in our environment, the desaturase enzyme instead acts on those fats, linoleic acid, and the others, and it desaturates those further, and then those fats products of desaturation are actually more harmful for our skin and promote bacterial infection by breaking down our normal biological functions and immune functions. Because that decreases the amount of sapienic acid that is made by our skin. So the second biggest factor in acne is the consumption of toxic concentrated polyunsaturated fat sources like concentrated vegetable oil and soy oil and fish oil and those kinds of other products. You don't need to avoid you don't really need to avoid the high dietary whole food sources of those. Like it's generally fine to eat like seeds and nuts and stuff like that. Actually, and we need like hazelnuts are one of the best foods you can eat because they are really high in oleic acid. They're one of the highest dietary sources, just like olive oil. Olive oil is really, really healthy for us because it's really high in oleic acid. But the bad ones like vegetable oil and canola oil, a lot of food is made with those. You go to any restaurant, chips and French fries and a lot of those products, they're all fried in these really bad fats. Some restaurants use peanut oil, which is not as bad, but it's still a little bad. But I wouldn't tell anybody that, you can't have like a Five Guys burger and fries, once a week. That'd be fine. But generally, like restaurant food is a lot of these foods are just made with these really cheap canola, vegetable oils, soy oil. All the mayonnaise in grocery stores now is made with nothing but soy oil. And these oils are really, really high concentrated sources of these bad polyunsaturated fats. Then those interfere with the production of sapienic acid in the skin, and that then inactivates one of our natural antibiotic resistance mechanisms on top of washing your skin excessively every day with soap and water. So basically, avoiding those those polyunsaturated fats though have much more systemic health consequences, and my videos so far I haven't really talked much about them, but I do talk about their toxic properties a lot in my book, and avoiding those is really, really important for restoring the integrity of your immune barrier on your skin to prevent acne in the first place, as well as a host of other metabolic diseases. If you're younger, especially, if you cut out those fats, you will age way more slowly, especially if you have a good diet where you don't let your blood sugar lapse and you don't starve yourself. You won't age very fast at all. You won't start aging until you're in your 30s, 40s. Whereas like me, for instance, I started aging as soon as I hit 20. I found my first gray hair at 21 because my diet and environment were so stressful growing up. So if you cut out these dietary fats, it has a host of other benefits that are better that will help you other than just acne. So what about washing your skin? So you can wash, like, just using water. Like I don't wash my skin. I just when I take a shower and my skin gets wet, and that's plenty. You don't need to wash your skin. Especially don't wash it every day. You are stripping away that protective antibacterial layer that is on your skin that is vital to resolving acne. You can though and should wash your skin occasionally. And so I also, so for the treatment of acne, I also recommend sulfur products. So we talked about how the root cause of acne is iron secretion through the skin from high dietary iron. But you still will absorb and secrete iron regardless of your diet because our body needs that iron. And when that iron is metabolically spent, the excretion route is through the skin. So you can actually use sulfur products, though, to help treat the remainder of the iron secretion out of the skin to inhibit bacteria because sulfur readily forms complexes with iron. So, a warning though, you absolutely need to keep sulfur products away from your eyes. It stings the shit out of them. It's not dangerous. It hurts like it's dangerous, but it's not actually really that dangerous. But it hurts like a motherfucker. So you need to so if when you use sulfur products, keep them well away from your skin. I mean, it's not your skin. This is the whole point, is to use it on your skin. Keep it away from your eyes. So I really like sulfur soap for this reason. Sulfur soap is great. It's fantastic. It's smelly, but it feels really great. And so I use a sulfur soap on my skin probably once a month to get rid of to clean out like impacted pores and things like that. And that's it basically. So if you have active outbreaks though, as you are cutting back on your iron and your polyunsaturated fat exposure, using a sulfur soap on your skin, and you can use it kind of frequently as you're recovering, but you do need to let the oil and commensal barrier restore. So I would take a break, go for stretches where you don't use that. But you can also use powdered sulfur on your skin. Like you can get like sublimed sulfur powder, and you can put that on your skin overnight. But again, and that's the easiest one to get into your eyes because it's a loose powder. So just be really careful, and you don't need a lot of it. Just put it on where the acne is at night, and in combination with reducing your iron exposure, and also it can help during this period just to help bring your iron levels down dramatically. Like avoid red meat for a while, because red meat is really high in iron. Especially it's really high. I get really frustrated. So I've had these assholes that sort of orbit my work but aren't supportive of it. And one person, for instance, criticized when I posted a picture of sauteed spinach, and he was like, "That's way too high in iron." But he's an advocate for liver consumption, and liver is the highest source of dietary iron that you can fucking possibly eat. But not only is it high in iron, it's high in highly bioavailable iron. So there are two different types of iron basically in biology. There's heme iron, like I mentioned earlier, but there's also non-heme iron. Most of the iron that is in plants is non-heme iron, and non-heme iron is a lot harder for our body to absorb in the first place. But heme iron is almost 100% bioavailable. So when you eat muscle meat or liver, you absorb most of the iron that's in there because most of the iron that's in that is heme iron, whereas in plants it's not. So even if you eat plant sources that are high in iron, you don't necessarily absorb it because it's not very bioavailable at all. But when you're eating liver, you're absorbing most of that iron, and it's a lot of iron actually too. So acne and a lot of metabolic diseases can be caused by things like that. Even though liver has healthy vitamins in it, you can get those vitamins from other sources. You don't need to use the liver. The liver is it's such an iron bomb. It's why when you taste liver, your tongue goes, "This fucking gross," because it tastes like you're eating metal, because you are. It's basically just a ball of metal. There's so much iron and copper in that it can cause toxicity and when you eat them. So I don't recommend eating that. But anyway, so it can help though during this period to also avoid red meat for a little while, just because it's high in bioavailable iron. And then once your acne clears up, then you can start eating red meat again. Yeah. So also you can also use a supplement of riboflavin, especially. So riboflavin will actually promote iron absorption, but because it's complexed with riboflavin, it helps your body manage it better. So it's safer. So you can also use a supplement of riboflavin to mop up the excess iron that is in your gut. You don't need a high dose of it. They come in really high doses, like 100 milligrams. You could take open a capsule and take 10 milligrams of that, once or twice a day or with food. riboflavin can really help to mitigate. Riboflavin, I think I read this in a study. I can't remember. This was like 8 years ago if I did. Riboflavin, I think, can help redirect iron excretion through the urine. Actually, I think I remember reading that when there was enough riboflavin, that iron secretion went through the urine instead of the skin. So, if you have really bad acne, consuming a riboflavin supplement could really help with that. Especially like if you have cystic acne, like riboflavin might help a great deal with that. And if you apply topical sulfur and use a sulfur soap on your skin, that can really help mitigate it. So basically, like, that's how you permanently cure acne. And it's not like 100% no acne ever. Like I got a zit the other day, but I hadn't had one for like 3 months or 4 months. I get one like once in a while, but that's actually a good sign that you are also, because you can get, like I mentioned earlier, anemia is not caused generally by insufficient dietary iron intake. It's caused by excessive storage of iron, where our pathways which regulate iron release from storage are impaired by other nutritional deficiencies. The greatest of those being dietary carotene and vitamin A and vitamin D. Those factors regulate hepcidin. I get those hepcidin. Okay, I did this last time, but hepcidin. Yeah, hepcidin. Vitamin A and vitamin D regulate hepcidin, which in turn regulates iron release. And so when you have deficiencies of those, there's also some other B vitamins that a deficiency can also cause anemia, like B12, because B12 is required to make heme in the first place. So if you have like a B12 deficiency, that can also cause anemia. And that have nothing to do with your dietary exposure to iron, and then just taking iron supplements or eating iron fortified food can increase those symptoms, especially chronic bacterial infections, because you're just overloading your tissues with iron, and you're still not addressing the anemia, because that's not what fucking causes the anemia. Only people in really destitute regions of the world that don't have access to regular protein intake have iron deficiency anemia. Everybody else, it's regulatory pathways that are causing it, not if you're eating any meat at all or any fruit and vegetables that have plenty of iron in them, you do not have iron deficiency anemia. You have probably vitamin A or vitamin B12 induced anemia, as those are the major contributors to that. So so if you just avoid, like, red meat, well, if you have really bad acne, that can help to reduce your iron excess really quickly. As a side note, a lot of people that are sort of in these orbits do things like blood donation and stuff like that. That is not the solution to addressing iron excess. I mean, you can, but like long term, that is not what is going to solve that problem. Zinc deficiency also plays a big role in iron excess. Also, excess protein intake actually promotes excess iron intake. More so when you have a dietary deficiency of B vitamins. So this is a little more complex, and especially if you're younger, if you're a teenager and you have acne, you don't really need to worry about this. But we can get disruption in our transsulfuration pathway when your ratio of dietary B vitamins to the amino acids methionine and cysteine are too low. So, sorry, that's meaning like low B vitamins, high protein intake. Because the B vitamins, pyridoxine, pantothenic acid, folate, and cobalamin, B6, B5, B9, and B12 are all needed in the transsulfuration pathway. And when you consume high animal products and refined grains, your ratio of B vitamins to those amino acids drops. And so then your body is not able to actually manage the transsulfuration pathway effectively. That in turn increases homocysteine, which excessively drives the metabolic rate and promotes high hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria. And hydrogen sulfide binds to heme and inactivates it. And so that makes your body's turnover of heme and iron rate increase dramatically. And that's one of the major primary causes of iron excess that most people are trying to address by doing things like excessive blood donation, which won't solve that problem. you know, and then somebody will be like, oh, well, what if I do it like twice a month? Like, no, that's not going to fucking solve the problem. You have to address these underlying dietary deficiencies. And that is primarily a deficiency of dietary fruits and vegetables. For instance, peppers, like bell peppers, they're one of the highest sources of pantothenic acid in our diet. And if you're like never eating any peppers, you know, you might have a B6 deficiency. Or wait, a B5 deficiency, I meant. And I always get B5 and B6 mixed up. I don't even know if I got that right. Chickpeas, for instance, are also really high in pantothenic acid. That's B5, right? Pantothenic is B5, yeah. So that is also a major factor in promoting iron excess, and that's more of a problem for adults, which doesn't necessarily correlate with acne, because adults kind of lose acne as you get older. And so that's because your iron excretion pathways get impaired, and this is a whole other topic to get into. But anyway, so increasing your dietary B vitamin ratio, not supplemental B vitamins, although they can help. You need to have dietary, because it needs to be with the food that you're eating. Dietary sources of these B vitamins are really important for fixing the transsulfuration pathway, which will reduce your excessive iron absorption by mitigating hydrogen sulfide production by hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria. So that's really complicated though, and that topic is more going to be elucidated greater in my upcoming book update, which will be coming out very soon. So yeah, so that was acne. Not too complicated. Basically, just, you know, avoid iron fortified food, and mostly that will be enough for people to fix their acne. And then if you have really bad acne, then using the sulfur and and also the polyunsaturated fat. Everyone should avoid the polyunsaturated fats though, anyway, because that increases aging and metabolic disease. Anyway, so Sam, you asked, why do potatoes cause you insomnia? Yeah, so potatoes, it's funny that you noticed that, actually, because a lot of people don't notice that correlation. So the entire nightshade family of plants, which include potatoes and peppers and tomatoes and eggplant, they all contain glycoalkaloid toxins that are meant to kill nematodes. Nematodes are microscopic little worms that burrow into food, into fruits and into vegetables and plants, and eat them. And the glycoalkaloids kill the nematodes by overstimulating their nervous system through the regulation of a neurochemical called acetylcholine. And it does the same thing to us in humans, although in very trivial amounts usually. So if you are sensitive to nightshades, it means that your nervous system is very sensitive and has a lot of damage to it, and it's not very resistant to stresses. You probably have, like, you know, high stress. You probably have high adrenaline and high cortisol too. Maybe even alcohol addiction or drug addiction, because that plays a major role in that, like I talk about in my book, in my chapter on alcoholism and addiction. So when you eat potatoes, if you are sensitive to acetylcholine, the increase in acetylcholine caused by the glycoalkaloid solanine in the potato increases your neurological activity, which causes you excess excitation and stress. And then that causes insomnia. So basically, just cut out potatoes for a little while, and then use the low antihistamine therapy that I talk about in my book, in the chapter on alcoholism and addiction, and the other advice that's in there, especially light therapy, that can heal it permanently. You know, I used to be extremely most people don't even notice though that it's the potato that's causing those problems, because it's not very obvious, like it's very subtle. But it does contribute to those problems: insomnia, agitation, alcoholism, and addiction. They're not the major cause; it's just a major factor in it, and you need to address that stuff. So the directions for that are in the chapter on alcoholism and addiction in my book. So. Yeah, Sam, you used to have acne, but it went away for no real reason. Yeah, that tends to happen when you get older. Your iron secretion pathways decline. It's not because you're healthy. People love that the acne stops happening when you become an adult sometimes, but it doesn't mean that you're healthy. It probably actually reflects a lack of health. Very often when I'm working with people, especially women who are very metabolically ill. When I get them, when I get their vitamin C recycling pathways restarted using zinc and vitamin C, they will always break out in acne again. And just because acne has such a social negative associations, people, just by default think that something bad is happening. But that's not true, actually. If you are aged and metabolically ill and the stuff you're doing causes acne, that's a really great sign that your iron metabolism pathways have restarted. And it's usually a really good sign that you're secreting excess iron again. Because part of the problem of metabolic aging is that you're retaining excess iron all the time, which means you're not using it, and that your tissue levels of iron are increasing excessively, which then makes you vulnerable to infectious and opportunistic pathogens, including viruses. So that can actually be a really good thing. And zinc and vitamin C participate in iron metabolism as well. And zinc and vitamin C deficiency can contribute to iron excess associated aging. So if you get more vitamin C in your diet, not just from a supplement, from foods and vitamin and zinc as well, that can very often actually restart acne, which is a great sign that your iron pathways have resumed, which is really important for getting rid of the excess iron and also utilizing the iron in necessary biological reactions. So yeah. For a child, how do sex hormones affect acne, like with puberty or menstrual periods? Oh yeah. So the major iron uptake promoting hormone is estrogen. And now a lot of people have negative connotations about estrogen because of social misogyny and institutional misogyny. We're off. A lot of our society is patriarchic and hates on women and talks about estrogen as if it's a bad thing. Estrogen is not a bad thing. You would fucking die if you didn't have estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone of growth. It is what makes us grow and repair tissue. It is very, very important for our health. Excessively limiting and mitigating estrogen can cause you a lot of health problems. What you need to do is you need to have normal levels of estrogen. So the pathway through which puberty starts to increase iron uptake is that when you hit puberty, you start producing more androgens, including women. Women have androgens as well. In fact, women have more androgens in their body than they do estrogens. A lot of people don't realize that, which is one of the reasons why they act very misogynistic when it comes to estrogen. And you'll see a lot of people talk about estrogen being bad. It is not bad. That is not how this works. None of the hormones that our body makes are bad. They're all very important for very important reasons. You would die without any one of them. Not right away maybe, but eventually. And actually that is one of the reasons why you do die when you get older, is because you stop producing these hormones that are very important for our physiology. There are also 4 different types of estrogen. I think there's 4. There might be more. There are 4 major ones. But anyway, so when you hit puberty, you start producing androgens. And then some of those androgens are aromatized into estrogen, and then estrogen promotes increased iron uptake in order to facilitate the generation of secondary sex characteristics. We need iron for those pathways. And so anyway, so it's the increase in estrogen expression in both men and women that promotes the genesis of acne through the uptake of iron that is participating in these pathways of growth that are happening to your body. And that's why it also can increase and change around menstrual periods too, because when you get an increase in estrogen, you get an increase in iron absorption. But the reason that is happening is because, so for instance, in the menstrual cycle, which part should I start off? So in the menstrual cycle, your uterus sloughs off the uterine lining every single time, and then it has to regrow that lining. That is a process of growth. Also, in ovaries, there is a structure called the corpus luteum that completely dissolves and regrows every single period. And your body has to regrow that too. And and then becoming fertile is anticipating a baby growing in your womb, and so that needs iron as well. So the menstrual cycle also regulates iron absorption for these growth processes. um so yeah, so that's how the hormones increase. But people who don't understand this might think, oh well, if I inhibit the estrogen, then that'll stop my acne. No, that is not how this works, and you shouldn't do that anyway. Excess estrogen can promote excess iron uptake, because the reason for that is because when you're ill, your body produces more estrogen in anticipation of the healing that will come in the future. Because if you don't have estrogen, you cannot fix tissue that's damaged or infected. You need the estrogen in order to regrow and repair those damaged tissues. So that's why the high estrogen during illness promotes iron uptake, is because the body will need that iron to heal the tissue afterward. The problem is that because of our contemporary societies, we can stay chronically metabolically ill for a very long time. So you've got this pre-healing phase of high estrogen, high iron uptake constantly activated instead of just the brief period that it normally should be. So that's why healing your metabolism, fixing your diet, fixing your environment, fixing your psychiatric health, because mental health can really affect your stress and your metabolic wellness as well, like I talk about in my books. So it's really important that you heal the metabolism in order to normalize estrogen levels to stop the excess chronic uptake of the iron. So it's not about, like, and I told this story too on another stream. Like one time, this woman had heard that adrenaline was bad, so she was taking a beta blocker just on her own. Just decided to do that. But the problem is that cortisol follows adrenaline expression, because adrenaline releases sorry, that made it sound like it was counterintuitive to what I'm saying, but you'll get that point. So adrenaline's role, one of adrenaline's major roles in the body, is to stimulate glucose release from glycogen to keep your blood sugar even and level. When you run out of glucose because of chronic high adrenaline production or a deficiency in carbohydrate consumption, that then stimulates high cortisol expression. So because she was taking a beta blocker, she wasn't releasing glucose into her bloodstream, and that tricked her body into thinking that she was deficient in glucose. And so then her body was secreting very high amounts of cortisol. And the same thing happens when you chronically diet. When you diet at all. When you incur carbohydrate deficiency, your body expresses cortisol in order to turn your lean muscle tissue into sugar. That's why you lose muscle weight when you diet and starve yourself or work out excessively, is because the excess stress hormones literally turn your muscle into sugar, because your body would die without sugar. It needs it to come from somewhere. So when you're not eating it, it comes from your own body. So for this person heard that adrenaline was bad, so she took a beta blocker, and then that caused her excessive cortisol production. And if she had continued that instead of asking me for help, she would have gotten to a place where she probably would have risked having a heart attack or a stroke, because her cortisol expression was so high, and she was really uncomfortable too. So anyway, so people get on forums and they talk to people who have no fucking idea what they're talking about, and they hear that estrogen is bad, and so then they take, like, all these like medicines and hacks to try to lower the estrogen instead of fixing the underlying problem. And it doesn't ever fix, because you're not addressing the underlying reason that it's happening. So anyway, so that's why, so the fact that we talk about estrogen promoting iron is how the body is supposed to work. It is not a cue to go out and try to hack your estrogen levels. You need to heal your body and address the underlying deficiencies that are causing the problem in the first place. Otherwise, it just won't ever fix. You'll just constantly be on this hamster wheel of taking medications and supplements and trying these things, and they just won't work anyway, because that is not how the body works. So anyway, yeah, that was a big warning in there, huh? Is there any specific reason for mostly back acne? Well, okay, so like I talked about earlier, so facial acne comes from, and if you have any other questions, ask them, because when the questions run out, I will end the stream. So feel free to keep asking questions if you want to keep it going. So also, thank you guys for being here. If you want to support my stream or get a book, you can follow the links in the description. I couldn't do this without your guys' help. So I think most of you that are in here are Patreon supporters. So thank you very much for helping me do my work. I couldn't do it without you guys. especially in these hard times. Okay, so earlier in the stream, I thought I talked about facial acne, that iron coming mostly from the brain because the brain is the most metabolically active organ in the body. Body acne is the same reason. You've got in your torso, you've got your heart and your lungs, and all those other really important organs that are all in there, and they're all using iron, and so that iron is secreted through your tissues. I don't know why it would be more on the back, but we do get acne in the front too. Like you can get acne in your chest and stuff, but you're not getting acne like on your lower back, right? It's always usually on the top of your back, which is where which is nearest your lungs and heart and those other important organs that are contained within our rib cage. So that probably has a lot to do with it. There's not a lot of science on that because scientific research on acne is so hyper focused on the pathogens that they don't even look into the reasons that they are there on those parts of the body. I don't think if you asked, probably no doctor could tell you anything about the iron stuff that I've just talked about. They're not taught it. It's not widely acknowledged, and even in research. So there, I don't have a lot of information on that, but that is the area where you're, in the rib cage is where our most important and active metabolic organs are. So back knee probably comes mostly from those organs. And that clears up too. That is the same solution. Same solution as face acne. There's no difference between the causes. It's all just excessive dietary exposure to iron and dysregulation of the endocrine system and exposure to polyunsaturated fats. And you can use sulfur also on your back. So Jay, so thoughts on dandruff. So dandruff is really interesting because dandruff is a bacterial disease or fungal disease. I meant to say a microbiological disease, but people think of it as dry, sloughing skin, and it absolutely is not that. Dandruff and related conditions like that, where the skin gets excessively dry and flaky, is caused by pathogens actually feeding on your skin. Dandruff is a yeast and fungal problem more than a bacterial problem. And so one of the reasons, so iron secretion through the skin contributes to that. But one of the more major problems behind dandruff is that yeast and fungus specifically require sugar. Usually, not always, but they usually require sugar. Actually, I think they do always require sugar. Actually, now that I think about it. They require sugars in order to survive. So that means that you have excess sugar in your skin, but that is not coming from dietary sugar. It's actually coming from metabolic stress. So when we are metabolically stressed, your cells actually leak glucose out of them. And that is the primary reason behind fungal infections like jock itch or dandruff or any other kind of fungal infection. It's a reflection of excess sugar in your skin caused by the inability of cells to retain that sugar. So they absorb the sugar from the bloodstream, but then it just exudes back out of them because your metabolic health is so stressed. So I often, hey Jarvis, and did I say hi Atticus? Hi Atticus. If I didn't say hi to you, nice to see you again. So I always tell people, if you're dealing with dandruff, just use zinc pyrithione shampoo. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's safe. It's like safe. There might be bad ingredients in it, but it's not something that you use like long term all the time. And even if they are harmful for you, it's not that harmful. Zinc pyrithione can be really effective, but it's only effective if you depending on your leakage of glucose, which depends on your metabolic health. So for instance, I was actually helping somebody recently who had dandruff, and we were dealing with it, and I told them this information, and we've made a lot of progress on their metabolic health. Initially, the zinc pyrithione did not help. And that was because they were leaking so much glucose because of their severe, and this accompanied hair loss too, because they were under such extreme metabolic stress. They were just leaking so much glucose that that medicine could not overcome the dandruff. But after several months of fixing their diet, keeping their blood sugar up, repairing their body, they used it again, and then it worked. So problems like dandruff are reflections of severe metabolic stress coming from excessive dieting, excessive exercise, a lot of, all these factors that cause your body a lot of stress. It can also include other pathogenic infections. For instance, Clostridium difficile can infect your gut lining. And so this actually, so I wanted to share this too, because it's actually part of my work that I've been doing. And since you guys have come and joined this stream, I can share like little updates to my work with you guys. Hi, Elliot. So, Clostridium difficile is a ubiquitous, dangerous pathogen that most people harbor. It lives in your gut, and it can infect the gut lining. And one of the ways in which it feeds on our body is it produces a phenylalanine derivative that stimulates excessive adrenaline release. And this in turn stimulates excessive glucose release from glycogen. This is actually one of the causes of diabetes, is Clostridium difficile infection, because it triggers this cascade where you have excessive circulating sugar. And your body doesn't want to use, like, a lot of people think of diabetes as an inability to use the sugar, but that's not really how it works. You've got high circulating sugar that comes not from the diet, that comes from pathogens like Clostridium difficile fucking up our sugar circulation pathways. And then cells do not want to consume that sugar in excess because it would waste calories and overly and cause excessive metabolic activity. Cells do not want to be excessively activated. It causes them damage, and they get depleted of nutrients, cofactors that are involved in those pathways. So the body purposefully downregulates insulin sensitivity. It's not, there's versions of acne. There's versions of diabetes where you don't produce enough insulin, but the types where you are quote unquote insulin resistant are on purpose by our body as a mechanism to inhibit excessive consumption of sugar. And generally the body then stores that excess sugar as fat. But this excess circulation of sugar can feed other pathogenic problems like dandruff because of the high circulating sugar stimulated by Clostridium difficile. Excuse me. So in my book, I talk about these pathogens infecting the gut, but my latest research has been on the immune system for I say latest, it's been now 4 years I've been researching this immune system stuff. And it's so fucking complicated. I almost gave up at one point because it was just so much. But so in my last update, I talk about the peroxidase system and how the peroxidase system oxidizes halides to participate in antimicrobial activities in the body. And I talked about how iodine, chloride, and cyanide all participate in that system. What I didn't talk about, because I didn't know about this yet, was the role of bromine in that system. So bromine is really, really fascinating. Bromine is a lot like chloride. So, we've got sodium chloride as table salt, and chloride is used in our body in a lot of pathways. And it participates in this peroxidase system for our antibiotic functions. Traditionally, the tradition of giving sick people chicken soup, when they're sick, the reason that is healthy for being sick is usually because it's just really high in chloride. There's a lot of salt in chicken soup. And it is delicious, but there's a lot of chloride in chicken soup. So if someone is ill and you give them a big dose of chloride like that, it can help them get better because it actually works as an abundant source of substrate for the peroxidase enzymes functioning in the immune reaction. But the problem is that chloride can also excessively oxidize our tissues. And this is actually one of the mechanisms of aging, where we lose the other peroxidase functions. And the one that's easiest for our body to maintain is myeloperoxidase, which preferentially uses chloride as a substrate. And then you get colonized with chronic bacterial infections as you age, and then the chronic expression of those peroxidase immune reactions and the excessive production of hypochlorous acid from chloride just keeps oxidizing your tissues forever and ever until you die. And that's one of the major mechanisms behind aging. That is not in my chapter on aging because that's part of the work that I've been doing recently, and it'll be added in the upcoming update. But okay, so bromine is another substrate in there, and bromine is more important because bromine actually participates in eosinophils, which are immune cells, in their peroxidase, and directly makes immune cells capable of eradicating infectious pathogens. And this was really kind of one of the keys that I was missing in this research, because a lot of the information on bromine, if you look it up, it really just talks about how bromine can be toxic. And indeed, bromine is in a lot of toxic chemicals. Like there's fire retardants that are on furniture and clothing. Those are a brominated chemical. There's also brominated flour and vegetable oil that are used as a preservative. And it's also used in like pool cleaning, like in management, like making pools sterile so that we don't pass diseases when we go swimming in pools. And in the jacuzzi, jacuzzi water products have bromine. So, and actually the reason that they're antibiotic is the same reason that they are used in our innate immune system. And a lot of studies that investigate correlations of diseases on populations don't directly show this, but you can see it because populations that have access to increased sources that are high in bromine have lower rates of metabolic diseases. And one of the biggest sources of bromine is the ocean itself. And that's why you get like surfers and Mediterranean populations. I was talking about this the other day with one of the people that I coach, and he had been to Spain a lot. And, people that live in Spain are just like, and Italy, they're all generally like really healthy, really low rates of metabolic disease. And they swim in the ocean a lot, and they also eat a lot of seafood. And that's also one of the reasons for the the health benefits of the quote unquote Mediterranean diet, is that you also get a more generous access to dietary bromine. And then that bromine participates in the specifically in the eosinophil peroxidase pathway that empowers neutrophils and other immune cells to attack pathogens. And it is bromine deficiency that most strongly promotes Clostridium difficile infection in the gut, which in turn leads to diabetes and the excessive circulation of sugar that can promote dandruff. This was a really long answer to that dandruff question. but what I was getting around to is that like dandruff can also be a symptom of bromine deficiency. And so bromine is not really available as a supplement. And in fact, a lot of bromine chemicals that are on the market are toxic. It's not something that you just want to buy and consume. What you want to do is get dietary sources of bromine. So going out for sushi can be a great one. Seaweed is usually really high in bromine. So consuming some seaweed, going out for sushi could be great. Eating quite a bit of sushi, if you have like dandruff or symptoms like that, can help a lot. If you have insomnia too, Sam, because you asked this earlier. So insomnia can be a specific symptom of bromine deficiency because of Clostridium difficile getting into your gut. And because Clostridium difficile produces that phenylalanine adrenaline stimulant in between meals when blood sugar is low. So Clostridium difficile is primarily after this intermediate. So a lot of people don't know this, especially people that talk about fucking sugar. Oh, and I wanted to also mention this too in this stream, and I will, since this was relatively shorter so far. Someone that chatted with me on Instagram sent me a post by this obnoxious doctor telling people to starve themselves for breakfast. It was just like, oh, fucking so stupid. But I looked at his photos, and at the first, he's handsome. Like, he's actually really good looking. but he's only 30 and you can see marked hair loss. And then I also and I just perused through his profile really quick, and I also saw someone else that was like commenting on a lot of his posts was this other keto expert, and she has really bad hair loss, and she doesn't look like she's probably older than like what, 27 or 28. Excuse me. And she had really bad hair loss. And women like men have patterned hair loss, right? But women can lose their hair too, but when they do, it's a much it's much more profound stress, because women are so resistant to hair loss that when you do lose your hair as a woman, it is reflective of severe metabolic stress. And so she's over here promoting low sugar diets and all these insane things, and posting keto recipes that aren't actually keto, but they are still really bad for you. And and she's got like some of the thinnest hair I've ever seen in a nutritional in a nutritionist. And it's because they're all advocating avoiding sugar. So Clostridium difficile takes advantage of that, because what happens is Clostridium difficile is interested in an intermediate. A lot of people don't understand. Oh yeah, that's what I said earlier, and this is what I meant to talk about. People don't understand that most of the glucose that you consume gets converted into fructose in your cells. Like most of the cells that take up glucose, most of the sugar that they bring in is converted into fructose before it is used in other metabolic processes. So when you avoid fructose and sugar and sucrose, what happens is that your body increases the rate of synthesis of glucose to fructose, because you're not getting fructose in your diet. So the polyol pathway that manages this function, its activity is increased, and Clostridium difficile is specifically interested in an intermediate in that process called sorbitol. That's the sugar that glucose wants, and that's the reason why that glucose wants. Oh my god, I guess I'm getting tired now. that Clostridium difficile, the reason that Clostridium difficile stimulates glucose release from glycogen is so that your cells will increase the polyol pathway activity, and that will thus give it increased access to sorbitol. And so when you're also avoiding sugar, like avoiding sugar is a big catalyst for these kinds of diseases for that reason, because it increases your polyol pathway activity. That increases the availability of sorbitol in your body that Clostridium difficile is ultimately after. Sorbitol does occur in foods, and like especially, but it's also actually an artificial sweetener sometimes, and that can actually also fuel Clostridium difficile infection. So anyway, so that's just to say that like dandruff and insomnia and those other symptoms can be a result of bromine deficiency. So seawater, sea salt has bromine, but not enough to be therapeutic. Like if you have like obesity and you have symptoms of C. difficile infection and diabetes, you need to get a source of bromine that's more concentrated. I would recommend like there are various like salt products from places like the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is notoriously really high in bromine. So normal seawater has like 66 parts per million of bromine, and the Dead Sea has something like 225 parts per million of bromine. In fact, it can be so high that it can cause bromine toxicity. And don't go crazy and think that you're going to get better by consuming excessive amounts of bromine, because it can have neurological side effects. But also it's also relatively safe though, considering I found a case study of like a 65-year-old man who had ingested something like 2 or 3 teaspoons of Dead Sea salt every day for several weeks or months, and he started developing what is it somnolescence, and like just like being and he was like incoherent and having pain, and he had something like 20 times the amount of bromine circulating in his body as normal. And especially because as you get older, like your ability to secrete bromine is impaired, probably on purpose actually, to increase bromine for the immune system. But so you don't want to overdo it, but like you can get like Dead Sea salt and like use it in your food. Like that would be a great way to get extra bromine. Or seaweed or seafood, going out for sushi. Yeah. So if you have dandruff, obesity, insomnia, those can be symptoms of Clostridium difficile infection that's increasing your blood sugar and adrenaline, and so you can increase your bromide consumption in order to address those as well. So not just using zinc pyrithium, but addressing your metabolic health and those pathogenic infections in your immune system. So Atticus, is the gluten in a high quality beer as bad as common wheat gluten? Yes. I found when I was before I found that I could have spelt and einkorn and kamut bread and pastries and stuff like that. Like, I mean, when I was younger, so a lot of you know that I was a big alcoholic, and then I was sober for like 3 years, and then I learned how to cure alcoholism, which, if you don't know, is discussed in my book. Um, uh, when I was still drinking before then, if I had a beer that had wheat in it, I would have gluten reactions to it. So I had to avoid gluten beer. A lot of beer doesn't have a lot of gluten in it, though. Like hops don't have gluten the way that, like, there's specifically like wheat beers that are brewed with wheat. But a lot of beer, or most beer, I don't really know a lot about the beer making process, but like a lot of it is around hops. Barley would be high in gluten, so I would avoid beers that are made out of high amounts of barley. But there are beers that are low in gluten because they're mostly made out of hops. You can also get, like, I would drink sorghum beer a lot, and it's actually really good. Like, the flavor of it is a little weird, it's a little different than normal beer, but it's actually really yummy and flavorful, and it was fantastic. So if you're sensitive to beer but you want beer, you can get sorghum beer. I think it was called Redbridge was the brand. It was really good. I haven't seen it for a while. I only drink like probably once every 2 months, but like I haven't seen, so I haven't really looked, but like if there was Redbridge around, I would probably just buy it for just because it's so fucking good actually. So so yeah. But yeah, so I would definitely avoid wheat beers and barley beers, and stick to ones that are mostly made out of hops or other ingredients that are low in gluten. Jarvis, can I talk about hyperpigmentation that comes with acne and what to do? So I was kind of in preparation for this stream. I just looked up like ingredients to like Curology or something like that, and I saw that there are. Hi, Elliot. So I saw that there are. And again, guys, if you want questions, if you want to ask questions, ask, because when they run out, I'll be ending the stream. I saw there was a product in it that was intended to resolve pigmentation problems from acne. I haven't had bad acne in a very, very long time, and so oh god, and I forgot one of the other whole points that, thank you for reminding me. So one of the other whole points of the stream too was to talk about acne scarring, and this probably would also help with that as well. So okay, so a lot of us have acne scars, right? And I don't know how to cure acne scars, but I do know how to make them softer and less prominent. In my book, in the chapter on hair loss, I talk about making a paste out of like shea butter and iodine, and that can also be used to soften acne scars. So iodine reacts with scar tissue and fibrotic tissue and makes it softer. And so if you make like a excuse me, if you make like a paste, you could probably also add in some natural vitamin E. Never use synthetic vitamin E, ever. Use some natural vitamin E in it. You can use that paste to, and the recipe is like in my book in the chapter on hair loss, but you can use that to treat acne scarring. It will soften it up and make it less severe. Because it'll make your skin softer too. I was working with a woman once who started using this on her skin, and then she said afterward that her skin was really sensitive, and when she scrubbed it, and also I should have brought this up earlier in the stream, but you'll hear it if you keep listening. You should never scrub your skin ever. Like, I mean, you can use an exfoliator like occasionally, but don't be taking like a rag and like scrubbing your skin. Like, when you do that, you're basically turning your face skin into a callus. your face skin can get really rough, and if you abuse it and cause excessive abrasion on it. So don't be doing that shit to your skin. But they complained that when they were scrubbing their skin, then their skin was actually more sensitive and scrubbing actually hurt from using the iodine and shea butter concoction. But then I was like, that's because the iodine is actually helping to reduce the callousing that's on your face. Your skin should be sensitive to harsh scrubbing. It should hurt if you take a cloth to your skin and just like, just scrape at it. Like, your skin is not, that's not good for your skin. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, and you should feel pain if you're doing that. That's actually a good thing. And so this stuff, it can actually soften up your skin and help address those things. So if you stayed and listened to this whole stream, then you got to hear finally actually hear the info about acne scarring. And the vitamin E can help too, because vitamin E is anti-inflammatory and blocked okay, so like earlier in the stream I talked about how the consumption of large amounts of dietary polyunsaturated fat can displace healthier fats and impair the synthesis of sapienic acid, which is unique to us humans. That is what's happening when you get like hyperpigmentation. You are getting these polyunsaturated fatty acid products that are made by our own skin from other dietary. So there's different degrees of unsaturated fats. You've got saturated fat, you've got monounsaturated fat, and then you've got polyunsaturated fats. But polyunsaturated fats can be more or less unsaturated. Like you can have less polyunsaturated fats or more polyunsaturated fats. And so the desaturated enzymes in our skin that are meant to make sapienic acid from I think it's palmitic acid. When you consume a lot of like less polyunsaturated fats like linoleic acid, they get desaturated into even more polyunsaturated fats that are really bad for your skin and your health in general. And those kinds of polyunsaturated fats are much more susceptible to oxidation, and then they polymerize in your skin because of oxidative damage caused by the bacterial infection and the inflammation. And that's what makes those that hyperpigmentation stuff. So using iodine can react with and destroy those structures, and vitamin E can help prevent them from reforming and block. Like, so vitamin E is a really powerful. Okay, so we have a lot of antioxidants that we eat or that we make in our own body, and a lot of antioxidants just consume reactive oxygen species. But when you have a reactive oxygen event, the oxidation of something can actually become a chain reaction where that reactive oxygen species oxidizes something else, then that product oxidizes another thing, and then that one oxidizes another thing, and so on and so on. And it can literally, like, like theoretically, like you could have one little tiny oxidative reaction in a cell, and it could oxidize your entire body. Like, that's how oxidation reactions work. Of course, that doesn't happen because we have very effective antioxidant pathways in our body. But that's what. But vitamin E specifically blocks the chain reaction of reactive oxygen damage. It's not so much a consumer of reactive oxygen species; it blocks the chain reaction of oxidation that goes through. So using that, that's why like using vitamin E topically in your skin can actually help with that kind of stuff, is because it blocks the oxidation chain reactions that occur from inflammation and infection and stuff like that. So that's why you can add a little bit to that stuff to use on your skin, and then the use of the iodine and fatty and saturated fatty acid concoction that I talk about in my book can be useful for treating those things as well. So yeah, thanks, Atticus. Elliot, how about blackheads? You never seem to get pimples, but you're getting blackheads on your nose in your 30s. Okay, so Ray Pete, I get this from Ray Pete. He said that eating potatoes for some reason can cure blackheads. And like there were periods when I was healing from alcoholism that I did not have potato, but it wasn't very long. It was only probably 3 or 4 months at a time. Sometimes like a month. So I've never really not had potato, and I don't have blackheads ever. And so I think it's true. But he doesn't know why, and I don't either. but it does, but it seems to be, and it might be through some function of the solanine that's in potato, the glycoalkaloids, maybe like somehow blocking bacteria that cause blackheads. I don't know, but eating potato, or do you eat, Elliot, do you eat potato at all, and do you still get them, or do you not eat potato? Mercy, you redacted your message. Lind, could one be supplementing vitamin E during excess oxidative burden? Yes, and you should, and occasionally eat potatoes. Well, Elliot, what's occasionally? Like, is it like once a week or once a month? Maybe if you ate more, but like I talked about earlier, like potatoes, like because potatoes are part of the nightshade family, if you have neurological stress and are sensitive to excess acetylcholine production, like I talk about in my chapter on alcoholism and addiction, then you don't really want to increase your potato intake because that can stress you out. You need to first address your neurological health if that's a problem, and then increase your potato consumption. But if that's not a problem for you, I would maybe just recommend trying to eat a lot of potatoes, see if that helps. I would also assume that maybe my topical potatoes. I don't know that using it topically would help, but you could actually do like, so I made a face mask for myself a while ago that was really lovely. I took some I juiced some cucumber, added a little bit of gelatin and sugar, and I used that as a face mask, and it was really fantastic. And so you could try something like that too. I also meant in this stream to talk about the toxicity of cosmetic products. So, in addition to acne, a lot of cosmetic products are sold to do things like moisturize your skin, reduce wrinkles. They're actually very often endocrine disruptors that can be really, really toxic for you. So probably about 6 months to 8 months into my recovery, when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous and first sober, I had gotten a new job and I was earning a lot of money. And I was like, oh, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go out and buy some really great Kiehl's products. Cause I used to love Kiehl's, and they sort of like have a lot of men's products, and the gays love them a lot. And so I had been introduced to them by a friend a long time before, but I hadn't had them in a really, really long time. Cause I'd been drunk all the time and wasn't taking care of myself. So I thought, oh, I'll treat myself and I'll go out and get some Kiehl's products. So I went to the mall and I went to the store, and their stores are set up really lovely, and all the people that work there are made to wear lab coats as if they're technicians. It's really dumb, but it's fun. And so I looked at the products, and what I realized that on the products, they don't list the ingredients. They'll list like the attractive things like orange flower and like, all that frou-frou shit, but they won't tell you what's really in it. And I hadn't just started this work. I had been doing this stuff for 6 months, and I already knew quite a bit about like the endocrine system and things like that. But I hadn't been expecting this. But when I went home and I was so excited, and I put it on, and literally within like half an hour, I started having a lot of the same symptoms that had been plaguing me when I was struggling with I still was struggling with my cancer at the time, but I had made a lot of progress on my health. I started sweating and feeling really awful. And I was like, holy fuck. I was like, there is some nasty shit in this stuff. And it's one of the secrets that people don't know about the cosmetic industry. They don't really care to heal your fucking wrinkles. Those products are not meant to solve the problems that they're advertised to solve. They are meant to elicit a noticeable change in your skin immediately when you use them. So for instance, like an anti-wrinkle cream, right? An anti-wrinkle cream is not designed to alleviate wrinkles. It is designed to cause swelling in the skin so that the skin absorbs more water, and then that inflammation makes it look like you have reduced the wrinkles. It's such a scam. They're really toxic for you, and they're really toxic for you because the chemicals that do that are estrogen mimicking chemicals, and they promote inflammation. Okay, so like earlier in the stream, I talked about how like estrogen is a growth hormone, right? So like the pathway that this happens is mitosis. Like we all know about mitosis, right? Like a cell swells with water, and then the DNA, and it starts to divide and split, and then the cell will split into two different cells. That's like the function that estrogen provides, is like cell division and growth. And so these chemicals that are in cosmetic products do this. They cause inflammation and swelling in the skin, because that then gives the appearance of wrinkle reduction, but it doesn't actually. It actually causes inflammation in your skin, and over time can cause skin thickening and even cancer. And they're terrible, terrible chemicals. You cannot buy these products. If you need to know what's in everything that you buy and you put on your skin. A lot of people also don't understand that your skin is like a mouth. Everything that you put on your skin gets absorbed into the body. It eats everything that is put on it. This is one of the biological functions of our skin. It's how our skin like resorbs minerals that are lost through sweating. If you swim in the ocean, like we evolved as a semi-aquatic species. Oh, and that, like, that plays into the information that I mentioned about bromine. Like, we evolved on the coast of ancient Lake Megachad, which was an endorheic lake, and would have had higher bromine levels than, say, like a river, or like, or even like other freshwater lakes. It's probably actually one of the reasons why we are some of the only surviving species of Homo, and I'm not talking about being gay. But humans, like human species, there were different species of humans around for the last several millions of years on the planet, but we're the only ones left. And I think a lot of that has to do with our access to, like, enough dietary bromine from our semi-aquatic evolutionary. So we as a species swam a lot in water in Lake Megachad, which is why we don't have hair on our skin. I mean, like fur, like coats of hair. I mean, we still have hair, but like, you know what I mean? Like other animals do. The reason we're largely hairless is because we had a semi-aquatic evolutionary past, and that would have put us in contact with high bromine in our environment. Wait, what was I talking about? Absorbing. Oh yeah. So and one of the methods of that, like our body absorbs nutrients from water when you're in water. That's one of the reasons why your skin gets all wrinkly. Your skin is a barrier to absorbing water into the body, but it absorbs water into the outer dermal layer of the skin so that it can then absorb the elements that are in the water and absorb them into the body. It filters them out. So that's why you get wrinkly, like if you spend a long time in the bathtub. But so your skin is like a mouth. You never want to put anything on your skin that you wouldn't also ingest into your body anyway. That's a very loose recommendation, because I wouldn't drink the Dr. Bronner's soap that I have in my shower. But the Dr. Bronner's soap is made from things like coconut oil and calcium, and it's a really gentle, like healthy soap to use. So like none of those ingredients, like coconut oil is healthy. Like you wouldn't want to eat the form of Dr. Bronner's soap, but the things that it is made out of aren't toxic to your skin. So, and a lot of cosmetic products they have really bad chemicals in them that are not designed to keep your skin healthy. They're designed to elicit a specific reaction so that you think that it's healthy for you, so that you continue to buy the product. So you do not want to use those things. You want to use, like, if you're making like that homemade face mask, like I just mentioned, like I juiced a cucumber, put in some gelatin and sugar, and it was so great. It worked really, really, really well. And to boot, it was, what, it only cost me like probably like $2. So yeah, always be careful of that kind of stuff. Mercy, are skin tags, age spots on neck helped by vitamin E? Skin tags probably no, but age spots yes. So earlier, I forgot who asked it. Earlier, somebody asked about the hyperpigmentation under acne. That's essentially the same thing as age spots. So age spots and discoloring from acne are polymerized mass of proteins and fats and sugar that form under the skin. mostly because of polyunsaturated fats from a diet high in polyunsaturated fats, but also our own endogenous production of the worst polyunsaturated fats from polyunsaturated fats by our desaturated enzymes, like I talked about earlier. They polymerize, they turn into like a mass, like they form complexes under the skin. And so if you use the vitamin D iodine, don't sorry. I also need to say warning. Don't just like go and make like a you know, a really potent thing of iodine and like on your own. Like it needs to be the right proportions. Iodine can burn the skin if you use too much, and it can also make a big spot on your skin. It will evaporate, like, though, but so it's not a big deal. But you don't want to hurt yourself. Like, follow the directions that are in my book. But yes, the application of like a vitamin D iodine fatty product can help your age spots. Yeah, but not skin tags. I don't really know what skin tags are caused by. I mean, I know that they're caused by like viruses on the skin. Like, they're like a version of HPV. But there's some misinformation from medical industry on there that say like age spots skin tags are like a result of abrasion or something. It's not true. It's a pathogen that does it. It's like they're like warts. But they're probably related to the excess circulating glucose, like I talked about earlier in the stream, with Clostridium difficile stimulating high adrenaline release, because they're usually associated with diabetic like symptoms. And so I think it's the access to excess sugar circulating in the skin, like I talked about earlier in the stream, which you address through restoring your metabolic health and addressing things like Clostridium difficile that I talked about earlier in the stream. So yes, Elliot, topical salicylic acid is actually safe. Actually, so topical salicylic acid is, you can use those as long as they don't have other harmful ingredients in them. Those topical acne treatments are pretty good. They're safe. You still need to address the underlying iron symptom things, though, like, this topic, like, because that's the thing. I just remember in my childhood being like, my parents buying me these products and I put them on every day and like, thinking that's going to cure my acne. It doesn't fucking work like that. You cannot cure acne through topical products. The problem is metabolic, dietary, and environment. And if you don't change those factors, you will continue to have acne. So, sorry, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the system. So yes, you can use it topically, but it will not cure your acne. You need to cure it. You need to do the stuff I talked about earlier in the stream: high dietary iron, high dietary polyunsaturated fat intake, that kind of stuff. But then you can, on the top of that, use topical salicylic acid products. You also actually, salicylic acid can be it's actually also a wart remover. All the products at the store that you get that treat warts, not all of them, but a lot of them are actually salicylic acid, and they all work through the same pathway. So one of the reasons, salicylic acid is an effective anti-inflammatory, and part of the eruption of acne on the skin is an inflammation reaction to the infectious bacteria. So and salicylic acid is also slightly antibiotic as well. So that's how that topical stuff works, is by inhibiting the inflammation and killing, or not killing, but inhibiting a little bit the bacteria that caused the infection. And it is also safe, actually. And it's also safe for wart removal. So you can, or probably even mole removal. Like, so the way that it works, so salicylic acid is anti-inflammatory because it raises the metabolic rate of the cells that it comes into contact with. And warts and growths on the skin, this is actually also why I recommend in my book, like I talk about using aspirin to treat cancer. It can also treat other growths like warts. And that's why it's actually used in, and I don't know if they know why they use it as the product, why it's used as a product, even the people that make it, how the mechanism of action is. But anyway, so if you put salicylic acid, like getting a salicylic acid wart remover, or you can even like crush up aspirin and wet it so it becomes a little paste. If you put that on warts, the way that it works is that it forces all those cells that are in a wart to increase their metabolic rate, and then that in turn induces apoptosis, which is the death process of a cell, because they're not supposed to be there. Cells are actually smart. Like they know where they're supposed to be, and if they're in a place that they're not supposed to be, they commit suicide. And then in the process so warts are caused by viruses, and they get in the skin, and they induce a growth there in order to siphon nutrients out of our body through the growth, and they sustain their presence by lowering the metabolic rate of those cells in which they infect. And so aspirin becomes a wart remover by forcing the opposite, by increasing the metabolic rate of those cells. That in turn triggers their apoptosis, and then the wart disappears along with the virus that can no longer survive without the wart there. So, and also you can use it also on genital warts and anal warts and other wart, just any wart anywhere on the body. Like you can use, I don't really know if that works on skin tags. It might, but you can use it. And a lot of people don't know this. And also a lot of people don't know how widespread like sexually transmitted warts are. Like so many people have warts, on their genitals or their butt, and it's really gross. You can treat them with topical aspirin, whether if you crush up an aspirin and wet it, or if you get like wart remover. A lot of wart remover products warn you not to use it on genitals, but that's just a cautionary protection so that they don't get sued by people. They think that like, genital areas are sensitive to the acids, and they're not really. Salicylic acid is not really a strong acid. It won't really hurt you. It won't really hurt you. If it does cause some irritation and is uncomfortable, just stop and then wait for that to resolve and then use it again later. But it can be used to remove all kinds of warts and probably even moles. Like, if you have like big moles on your face that you want to get rid of. I don't know. I'm all for body positivity. I constantly get angry at fat shaming people and stuff, but I don't understand people who walk around with like giant moles on their face and don't do anything about it. Like it's gross. It's gross. Like it's just gross. Like go get that removed. it'll take a day. It'll take 3 hours at a dermatologist's office, and you can get it lanced and be done with it. And if you don't have access to medical care, you can put aspirin on top of it, and putting aspirin on it like every night when you go to bed. If you use like an aspirin, if you make like an aspirin paste, you can put a Band-Aid over that. You can put it on and then put a Band-Aid over it. Or if you just buy like wart remover stuff and use that, and just use it every single night until it disappears. So easy, and it'll just be gone. And and if you have warts on your genitals or other body parts, like you need to get rid of those. Like you're spreading that shit around. Like don't do that. Stop having sex if you have those and get them treated. You're infecting a lot of other people with those things. It's selfish and wrong and bad. You need to get that addressed before you engage in sex. Anyway, yeah. Our blood draw is really effective on a regular basis. A good way to rid PUFA. And no, I mentioned that early in the stream, Mercy. Yes, a lot of people talk on forums that donating blood is a great way to reduce your iron. No, it's not. Your body, if you do that, you're just going to reabsorb all that iron again. You have to address the underlying causes of iron absorption, which I do talk about at length in my book. It's it's zinc deficiency, it's vitamin C deficiency, it's sunlight deficiency, it's hormonal imbalance, it's transsulfuration pathway deficiency interruptions. So those are the ways to do it. Donating blood can temporarily reduce your iron store, but it also causes you to lose all the other nutrients that you lose in your blood from donation, and you'll just absorb it right back. It is not a long-term solution. It will not solve those problems. Blood draw wouldn't also get rid of PUFA anyway. That doesn't have anything to do with that. People usually use it for iron, but that's not good. Like people that say to donate blood to get rid of iron do not understand where the excess iron is coming from in the first place, because that just is not a solution to doing this. Like, in ancient times, like it was common to use leeches to treat disease, because doing that to temporarily reduce iron access to excess iron by pathogens can have an effect, but it doesn't work long term, and it is gone, away from medical practice because it's not an effective solution to those health problems. It's just more annoying, and it definitely will not work. It will not have benefits for you long term. You'll just absorb all of that iron back again in a very short period of time. You have to address the underlying causes of the iron excess. So, um, you yeah, you wouldn't drink the bar soap either. I tasted this. I tasted soap once during my experimentation on oral disease. I was like, I wonder if, like, because there's actually like natural saponification chemicals in plants, saponins. And I've had mixed experiences with the ones that I experimented with. I use like yucca, which is not the same as yucca. People can understandably confuse yucca and yucca all the time. Yucca with one C is the root vegetable that we eat. Yucca is the flowering western plant here that looks kind of like an agave and gets a really beautiful flower spike on it during the summertime, or not the summertime, during the wintertime, when it's a rainy season. They're gorgeous. And yucca is more of an herb, whereas yucca is the root. So I was experimenting with yucca, which is used as a herbal treatment, and it's really high in saponins. And one time it seemed to have a benefit in my experimentation, and then later it just had none. And so, but then I was like, I wonder if like soap would help a little bit. So I tasted the soap just to kind of, oh god, it was so fucking gross. And fuck you if you are a parent that washes your kid's mouth out with soap. You are an abusive parent. You should be thrown in jail. That is such disgusting behavior. And I can't believe people ever did that to their children. That is so horrifying to do that to somebody. Yeah, you're welcome, Mercy. Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know the stuff that I know. I'm like the only one that does. Like I stumbled on this this path of like being able to figure out it's like I often compare it to like pulling the thread on a loose thread on a sweater. Like I found legitimate science and understood what was going on, and so then just the more that I pulled on that thread, everything interconnects in my work. Like when you see other people's work, it's often very limited, and there are a lot of contradictions, or not maybe even directly in their work, but if you try to apply that to other health problems, they don't make sense because the other stuff wasn't right in the first place. But because I figured out a foundation of stuff that was legitimate, through Ray Pete, I was able to continue pulling on that thread. And then when I figured things out, and made discoveries, they made sense when trying to reconcile them with past science, because that's actually how it works. So, I mean, yeah. And so a lot of people don't even know these things because the paths that they have been exploring weren't even correct in the first place. So they just don't ever get to the solution anyway. So, hey, Phallus. Nice to meet you. If I haven't before. You messaged me on, coffee. Oh yeah. Hey, you're welcome. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Yeah. So he was asking me about coffee causing excessive stress. And if you drink, there are two causes of stress from coffee. One that a lot of people don't understand is that if you make coffee with water that has a lot of oxygen in it, that can actually introduce oxygen into your gut. And coffee is actually a very effective prebiotic. It actually powerfully promotes bacterial growth in the gut. If your gut is hypoxic and normal and healthy, that will help your commensal microbes a lot. Coffee has actually been shown in studies to be highly bifidogenic, which means it promotes bifidobacteria. But if you brew coffee with water that has a lot of oxygen in it, that will actually turn your gut oxygenated, and that will promote aerobic microorganisms, which will overgrow prolifically and produce toxic chemicals, and can actually make you like feel really bad. And a lot of people don't realize that there's actually like if your faucet has an aeration grill on it, and that's when you turn your faucet on high and it like the water looks white when it comes out and foamy, that's oxygen being added to the water. And you want to get rid of that. A lot of faucets, you can actually unscrew the little end and take out the grill. But if you can't do that, you can just run the water slow enough that it doesn't foam up, and then that will prevent that anyway. But the other thing is if you just have high stress hormones in the first place, if if you have like dietary or environmental factors that increase adrenaline excess expression, the chapters in my book that I talk about this are the biggest one is depression. Depression goes a lot into sources that stimulate adrenaline excess. But then there's also I think there's information also in the chapter on erections and libido, and you can also have psychological triggers for excess adrenaline production, although they're not the major ones. The sunlight deficiency is like one, low blood sugar, excess exercise. If you're engaging in behaviors that promote high adrenaline chronically, that will in turn also cause high cortisol. And then when you have coffee, it will just actually so coffee is caffeine is actually dopaminergic. So it primarily promotes dopamine, which is why caffeine and coffee can make you feel so nice, is because it actually promotes dopamine production. But if you have high stress hormones, adrenaline is made out of dopamine. So if you have high stress, dopamine gets funneled immediately into adrenaline. And so then coffee use can make you feel really bad because it's actually promoting adrenaline, not dopamine. So you have to address those factors that I talk about in my book that shift dopamine into excess adrenaline if you have bad reactions to coffee. And this is also relevant for like that's actually one of the underlying mechanisms of hair loss, like I talk about in my book, because like excess stress hormones choke off blood supply to your scalp. A lot of people try to use medicines to counteract this. Like one for instance, like the way that why can't I say that? Minoxidil? Minoxidil? What's the fucking hair? Minoxidil? Oh my god, I can't even remember what it says. Anyway, that one, whatever that one is, it tries to stimulate blood flow to the scalp chemically, but that can actually induce more hair loss if you're excessively stressed, because more stress hormones on already stressed tissue causes them to further deplete their nutrient supplies. And that's one of the major, and I talk about how like hair loss is caused by localized disruption to the kynurenine pathway. There's a stream about hair loss in the channel now, earlier that I did earlier that you can listen to, but also my chapter on hair loss covers this too. That and so it's that same principle. So resolving, like if you have bad reactions to coffee, that's actually a good diagnostic tool. Like you can know that means that you have really high stress hormones that you need to address in order to resolve other metabolic problems that might be plaguing you, like if you have weight gain or hair loss or fatigue or insomnia. And then like I talked about earlier in the stream, if you guys are listening now but didn't hear earlier, like I went into about like how Clostridium difficile can promote excess adrenaline and how that needs to be addressed. So addressing that kind of stuff can help you enjoy coffee, not only enjoy coffee, but also like just get metabolically well all around. So thanks, fellas. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to end soon. So if you want to ask any more questions, get them in here. The salicylic acid product you have has niacinamide in it. Yes, that's great. That's actually fine. Is too much niacinamide a problem for that pathway you talk about? Oh, yes, actually too much is a bad thing. So when I was like first doing this work and I started experimenting with like basic things like niacin, like I did do too much. Like I tried high dose niacinamide and it gave me a massive migraine. There is some such thing as too much, but niacinamide is much more forgiving than niacin. And so the risk of excess is not as high, but I would still keep it to a minimum and not use much. But also the idea, Elliot, of adding those products to the skin is not metabolically relevant. It's a distraction. Someone's trying to sell you a product. It's bullshit. I would stop. I don't use that stuff. And I got a pimple on my head last week, but generally, like I don't get acne and I don't use that stuff. I don't even take aspirin anymore. Aspirin should only be used if it's necessary. Aspirin can deplete you of vitamin K and glycine because it excessively stimulates metabolic respiration. You should not use aspirin in excess if you don't have to. The only people that should be taking high dose of aspirin are people with really bad cancer. Otherwise, the risk is too great. You should not be using it in excess, and you certainly don't need to be using it on your skin. If you are using it on your skin because you have skin problems, that is not going to solve them. You have to address the underlying pathways that cause it. And and also, if you didn't know, there's a whole chapter on acne in my book that covers all this. So you can and in more detail. These streams do not cover all the details. These are just, me trying to get my message out there and help people as best I can. But like, the reason I wrote the book is because it is packed with information that I just can't possibly cover in an entire stream. So there's an entire chapter on acne, other chapters on iron and infectious diseases, that are relevant to these things we've been talking about. So you can reference them in there. And generally too, like if I don't recommend something in my book, like don't do it, don't use it, don't buy it. There's no need to. A lot of people just use it, and a lot of supplements and things can be really harmful. Like some people don't know, like, I don't know, maybe Phallus, like maybe this might be an issue for you. Some people take SAMe, methionine, is that what the long form is? Because they heard it's good for you. It is one of the best ways to promote excess stress hormones. It is a transsulfuration pathway intermediate that stimulates excessive adrenaline production. People can even get addicted to SAMe because it's an adrenaline stimulant. Don't take shit like that. It's so bad for you. I've learned these lessons the hard way too. I've taken so much shit in my past that, like, there's an article about supplements on my called a supplement guide in my blog that details a lot of the supplements that I've used over my life, and a lot of them, there's a huge list of harmful ones, and they're all ones that I took, and because I heard they were good for you. But like, people, number one, people are trying to sell you that shit. They're not being honest about what it does. Number two, they might be ignorant to the side effects of it, and so they don't even know to tell you. And then number three, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And you are going to cause yourself a lot more problems. So this stuff, and in my book, I also make a huge effort to pare down the amount of supplements that I recommend. My upcoming update is going to get rid of even some others that I've been recommending in there, because supplements are never, ever the cure for these problems. The cure, first and foremost, always comes from your diet and your environment, first and foremost. You are never, ever, ever going to be able to get well just through supplements. And every time I get people signing up for coaching, they come to me and they're like, I'm taking all these supplements. Why am I not getting better? And I say, it's because you're taking all those supplements. That's why you're not getting better. You have to fix your diet. You have to eat adequately. You have to get enough carbohydrate in your diet, sugar, and sunlight. Those are far more important. And the reason that you've never gotten better is because you've never really tried to fix your diet. Everyone, has their diet and then they try to work around it. But I promise you, your diet is the problem and your behaviors are the problem first and foremost. Supplements are only meant to sort of help you push those things over the edge. And my book is the best biohacking book in the entire world. Other biohacking books are total bullshit and they don't know what they're talking about. And they're usually harmful, and they hawk tons of supplements, and that is not how you biohack. You biohack by working with your biology, not against it. And the only way to do that is first and foremost through diet and environment. So anyway, I'm really angry today. Because I think it was because I was seeing those Curology commercials, and it just brought back all this trauma of having been put on Accutane and all the stuff I went through as a kid with acne. It's so fucking ridiculous. And kids, you don't even need to have acne. Like, you don't. Like, you just avoid this fucking wheat, fortified wheat, and get sunshine and eat good diet. Like, it will get rid of your acne, and you can just use some gentle topical sulfur stuff. It's so easy. You don't need to be suffering from it. Yeah. So actually, if you know any kids, nieces and nephews that have acne, refer them to this stream. We can get rid of acne together. Also, actually, I did also want to mention the depression and self-esteem issues that you also feel around acne are not caused by your acne. And when you're young, it's hard to understand that difference. But like, we get a lot of trauma growing up as children from inadequate parenting and inadequate community support. And we get this impression that problems like that are our low self-esteem, if we don't have a six-pack, or we don't think we're pretty, um those are results of trauma. They're not true. Like, there are a lot of people with acne that are absolutely beautiful. Young people in general are beautiful, just because, you're just young. Like, it doesn't matter if you're young and you're fat and you have acne, you're still gorgeous. Like, young people are so beautiful. Like, you have your whole life ahead of you. Personality and other stuff, you don't understand how attractive that is. Like, young people that are excited for life, and don't have all this trauma of that comes later in adulthood, that's beautiful. And the reason that you feel bad about yourself because of acne and the way your body looks is a result of trauma, and it's not real, and you need to address that psychological trauma. And my books go into that deeply as well, especially The Perfect Child. The Perfect Child very, very, very thoroughly explores childhood trauma. It's written for parents because that was like the method that I thought might be most effective in stopping child abuse, is to help the source of child abusers stop their behavior that's abusive, which are parents. And so, like, but it's for everybody. It's directly targeted toward resolving childhood trauma, and that includes things like acne, and your dad forcing you to be on Accutane. Like, I have done a lot of trauma therapy that I developed in that book on my dad forcing me on Accutane, and the damage, the health problems that it saddled me with for 2 decades of my life. It was really, really helpful to resolve those those experiences of trauma, and they don't originate from your acne. That's just a trigger for your psychological trauma, and you need to find compassion for yourself and address those psychological issues as well as the physical ones. 911. Hey, 911. Yeah. Sorry, I was gone for just like a week. I got really busy with my research and work, so my brain was too burdened to get on and do a stream. But I'm going to always be doing streams, and I'm going to try to do at least like 2 a week. So, you're wondering if there's a safe hair dye to cover grays. I have never dyed my hair, nor which is one of the really funny things. Okay, so probably, like, what was it, like no, yeah, it's been like probably like 4 years. So like 4 years ago, like, I've had gray hair in my hair for so long, but I've never dyed it. But what I was doing was I was buzzing the sides of my head really short, and that would, because most of my gray hair is on the sides of my head. So, and I like a fade, and so, like, I was buzzing it short anyway, and that kept the gray down. But then I had a period where I didn't get a haircut, and more of my gray hair grew out. And I posted a picture on Instagram, and some asshole who had like never talked to me came along and was like, wow, you have so much gray now. Like, like, he was like accusing me of not being good at my work because I had so much gray. Basically, is what he was insinuating. And it wasn't even like, hey, great picture. Like, you look so happy. Like, I noticed you have gray hair. Like, what do you have? Do you know what causes gray hair? It was like, you have so much gray hair. And so I just blocked him. I've never really been concerned with hiding my gray because I've had it for so long. Like, I first started going gray at 21, and it was, I had plenty of gray hair by the time I got to 30, and so I've just kind of gotten used to it. So I've never even like looked into things like hair dye. But I also think hair dye often looks really stupid on people, especially men. I think men that dye their hair, there's a disparity between the roughness of your aging skin and then having like hair that's all one color. I think it looks so bad. So I don't even like bother with hair dye. I think it's fun to dye your hair if you're like, if you want to do like a color or something like that, if you want to go like orange. But no, I've never looked into hair dye, so I don't really know. I know they have, hair dye and stuff have really harsh chemicals. I mean, but bleach, like, for instance, if you get your hair bleached, like, bleach can be toxic, but it's not really that harmful, like, to dye your hair. It'll irritate your scalp a little bit, and then you'll be fine. Our immune system uses bleach, actually, but it can be really harmful too. Some misguided people like consume chlorine dioxide, like, because it can like kill off gut pathogens. But Chloride dioxide mostly results in chlorite and chlorate, which are extremely oxidizing, and our body produces hypochlorite, which is a degree less oxidizing than those. And it can be really harmful for your body, and it doesn't necessarily even work. Like it's sort of random if it will work or not, and it'll likely just cause you a lot more problems. Do not ingest chlorine dioxide. It's so dangerous. But if you use it on your skin, you know, if you use bleach on your scalp on your hair to bleach yours, it'll cause you some irritation, but it's not toxic. But there can be very toxic chemicals in cosmetic products and hair care products. So I would just do your own research and not use something that has like, even like hair care has like ammonia in it, and like, yeah, ammonia is toxic for you, but our body makes and deals with ammonia. So yeah, it can be really hard to figure out what it, especially if you don't know as much science as I do. It can be really hard to figure out what is bad and what is not bad. But hair dye, because you're not ingesting it, I wouldn't say I would be as concerned for that kind of stuff as I would, like, you know, if you're applying cosmetics to your skin every day. Those tend to have endocrine disrupting chemicals in them because they're trying to induce an inflammatory response in your skin to make it look plump and smooth. But that's not what hair dye does. Hair dye just adds color to your hair, and your hair is dead pretty much anyway, so it's not that concerning. So anyway, okay, is that all the questions? Time to go. Thank you guys for hanging out. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I was afraid this might actually be too short because acne is so easy to treat. But yeah, if you have acne, you know, do those things. Read my book. My book has a lot more detail on iron and the causes of iron excess and diseases that are associated with it, like acne. That are pretty easy to resolve, actually, if you understand what's really going on there. And then you don't have to do stupid things like donate blood. Jesus Christ. Anyway, hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you for coming by. Sometimes I play Subnautica, but I'm a little tired today, so I'm not going to. Sorry. So, also, I don't really get a lot of views on those. I didn't think I would, but I'm not sure that it's a really great use of my time. I like gaming. I'm gonna have to figure out more fun. Maybe this acne thing will get me more younger viewers that will watch along with my gaming streams. But I'll do that again on a later date. So anyway, hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you for coming by, and check out the links in my in the description, and you know, help support the stream if you can. Really appreciate you guys' support, especially my Patreon supporters. You guys rock. Thank you for your support. I would not be able to be doing